first of all, let me just go around. This just absolutely wonderful what we've heard. Absolutely wonderful. I'm just going to get some reflections from different people on again, did we answer the question with regards to how come we're not doing the things we should be doing, and why and what can, more importantly, is what can we do about it? Milt, you talked about the indigenous, but let me go back to Ilarion. Ilarion, what do you think of the presentations today, and what were your observations, and what would be your suggestions?
Thank you, Brent. I think that what the messages that we heard from people contain pieces of what we must do. And so I appreciate that. But one thing that I think is that business as usual is not going to work. If we're doing the same things we've done all along, it's not going to work. Because it's coming from the mind. And the mind is logical and rational. But when you go to the heart, it's trans-rational. This is something that's very difficult to communicate. That when we are guided by our heart, it never guides us wrong. It always guides us right, because it contains love, patience, tolerance, all of these things that we seek in the world today. But yet people, I feel, have not yet reached their hearts to tell them what they must do. The mind is to implement that which your heart is telling you. And that, Mother Earth, we're all concerned about Mother Earth because she's bringing us to the edge of survivability, all living things. But Mother Earth, she can heal herself. She doesn't need us.
Yes, she doesn't.
She
can swat us off and move on.
Yeah, really. And we think about all these things that we're trying to tackle now, like, climate change. But there are thousands of more environmental organizations in existence today than there were 30 years ago. But yet we're still going to the edge of survivability, and we don't ask why. And of course, we're concerned about going to the root of what is the cause of all these things that are happening in the world. And we're working with the National Council of Elders from Colombia. It contains over 100 tribes and 400 elders, including the Kogi, for those of you who are familiar with the Kogi. And they have asked us to help them with this vision that they hold, which is to create a focused vibrational field as something that is going to be different than the consciousness which creates this field around the world now. And that until we do this, nothing is going to change. And we need to think outside the box. We need to think outside of what we already have done for all of our lives and focus on this vibrational field. Now, the elders in Colombia say that, we're working on a thing where we're going to connect all the indigenous people of the world. It's an indigenous-led effort to create this focused vibrational field. And that if others want to help, then they can help by praying that this becomes a reality, or you contact an indigenous elder and do what they say you must do for this time. But that, we have many organizations around the world that are trying to do these kinds of things, but they do not have the process that has been developed worldwide by indigenous people that with the experience that we have, and that this is why it needs to be indigenous led, because we know what must be done. And they have each of the organizations and people around the world who are indigenous have always conducted these kinds of ceremonies, but they're regional and their effect is regional. Now we must connect all of them around the world.
Absolutely. You just said something, Larry. You just said something that sparked something in my. When I look at the difference in milk, you also, by the way, you're wonderful, both of you, wonderful presentations. But what hit me, right, when you just talked about, Larry, about the elders. In Western civilization, we don't have elders. We inventory of them for the grave in retirement residences and also basically in nursing homes. And they're completely discounted. Whereas successful civilizations that have lasted millennia, and I say that indigenous have, notwithstanding the fact all the stuff that basically has happened to indigenous people around the world, right? But look at China. They still have a respect for their elders. We don't. They're an annoyance, right? And you see it, I was just at 100th birthday for my Aunt Flo in Ireland. I'm Irish. And you see it. And of course, they had the big 100th birthday. But as soon as the birthday is over, they're gone. They're all gone out to dinner, but they're not taking Flo. So it's like, so one of the things I wonder, can we bring in, could we do that? Could we get that back? Well, Indian society is also very good in general, although the more Americanized, and again, Shiv, I'll ask you Shiv and Jervasu to kick into this. They seem to also have a very good respect for their elders. Could we bring that back into Western civilization? Or what do you think, first of all?
Yeah, that's very true. What we do with the elders now is put them in senior homes and old folks' homes. And when I visit them, half the people are dead in their eyes. They don't have any life. An elder needs some purpose in life in order to live. And we've taken away that thing. And what this all means
at our cost. Right?
Yes, and yes, exactly. And what we do is to marginalize people because we are separated from our hearts. When we separate from our heart, we're separating from an integral part of us. And then it's easier to separate from others. And then ultimately to separate from Mother Earth. And this is.
And just stay with that for 2 seconds. We've also separated from our children. We now we got them in the elder home at the beginning, daycare. Oh, I'm too busy making a lot of money. Got to go daycare, stick them into daycare. It's interesting that the two bookends of our lives, we put
that's very true
important people in our lives, and we basically just kind of says, well, they're kind of an adjunct. I hadn't thought about it until you started to talk about the elders, and I'm thinking like, oh, we don't have elders. Actually, we don't have our kids. Our kids are basically at the end of the day, we're going, and then you see how they speak to the elderly. Like, listen, when you go to visit them, how you doing, Betty? How you doing today? Would you like to come and see Bingo? I mean, what the hell? We'll all go nuts, with that kind of attitude. It's a degrading attitude towards the individual. And and I know that 90% of communication is nonverbal. You also watch people that go visit, they go visit their grandmother and they'll sit around and they're doing their duty, but they'll end up talking to themselves, not to the grandmother. I'm sorry.
But that's a result of us giving up our personal authority. When I grew up as a child, the adult's job was to create space for a child to learn. Not tell them what to learn, how to learn, or to define anything. I grew up not asking a single question. I did my job of watch, listen, and learn. And in this way, I was able to expand out to the maximum of my capability by myself without the dictates of an adult. Now look at what we have done with our systems. We school them, and when the chairs are all lined up in a row facing one direction, to what? To the authority.
Yes.
Then we go to a postdoctorate degree, and anything less is considered inferior. And so what we've done is indoctrinate ourselves through colonialism to do these kinds of things that give up our personal authority. When we have
going back to education, what you just said, Alvin Toffler in The Third Wave, I thought was a perfect description, where he said our education systems and our has been set up for the industrial age. You now look at the schools; they look like factories. We line them up, we ring a bell, in they come. We put them in one end and go out the other. All the rejects are just kicked out the side. Oh, special learning, right? ADD, attention deficit disorder. Like, I'd like to punch somebody. We all learn differently. And as soon as you say to a kid, just like an elder, as soon as you say to a kid, oh, we're sending you to the special class, it's down to their confidence. And so we're not also stopping and looking at the person. We're looking at a second institution that basically shoves them in one end of the tube and pushes it out the other side. And at the end of the day, that's just the way it is. And as you said, Ilarion, if we always do what we've always done, we'll always get what we always got. Now how do you get change? You need a significant emotional event. A revolution? That's one way. But we have to have a revolution that, in actual fact, because people will not change. They will not change unless there's a significant emotional event. They'll change if there's a significant emotional event. Other than that, as Jagdish said, we'll stay in our little bubble, right? And we'll say, oh, isn't that too bad? And there's nothing worse, by the way. And I sat on the board of honoring Indigenous people at Rotary, which is another thing that goes across. 50% Indigenous, 50% Rotarian. And it's a wonderful idea. But then it's taken over by sanctimonious people that in actual fact are white. Talk and tell them basically Indigenous people, oh, we're going to have this meeting, and we should all wear the red shirts. When I hear that, I go, God. Again, it's actually insulting to say, we're wearing the red shirts to basically support you. Bullshit. I'm wearing the red shirts because look at me. I'm in support of the Indigenous people. I don't even have a clue what I'm fucking talking about. Sorry, you got me on the wrong thing. But we need to get almost that mad. We can't, one of the things we talk about spirituality, everything's nice and everybody's hugged and we're trying to find ourselves and whatever. It's not that easy. And Jivasu, what you took me through, in actual fact, on the sixth chakra, it is a shock that, in actual fact, anyway, sorry, you got me. I've been listening all night, and it's very hard for an Irishman to make a long story short. But what's the solution?
What the Hopi and Maori say is
what's that? Yeah.
What the Hopi and Maori say is that we must let go of the sides of the riverbank, move toward the center, find those who've done the same, and celebrate. Now, what that means is letting go from the side of the riverbank is letting go of all things that we are used to doing. We must let go of our attachments as human beings. Going to the center means going to the proverbial heart center and the center of the river of life, because it knows where it's going. We don't. Then find those who've done the same is find those who have had the courage, like you had, to jump. Those, according to our elders, are going to be the new definition of tribe. And it's not a revolution, it's an evolution.
Yes, that's true. But it's so frustrating to watch. Not that I'm any, every one of us have our own hang-ups of some kind. including the indigenous, by the way. That's the other thing by learning that, everything's, isn't it terrible what we did to the indigenous people? Well, shut the hell up, right? Let's move forward. I absolutely understand it, because this has happened around the world, but let's move forward together. What are we doing? And when you've got the sanctimonious people that, I really think it's terrible what we did to the indigenous people. Shut the hell up. What are you doing about it? Other than wrapping yourself in a red shirt and saying, look at me, haven't I good?
What we do, we're tied in consciously to a triangle of savior, victim, and it just is a triangle that we're stuck in. And so people who have been colonized, like many of the indigenous people have, they consider themselves victims. And the white people, or the younger brothers, as the Kogi say, are people who perpetrated this. So you got the perpetrator, the victim, and the savior. And we must let go of that
narrative. Like, for example, Ireland. There's been so much, there's been genocide all over, colonization. Ireland was colonized. It had 8.5 million people when it was colonized by the Brits. By the end of the famine that hit there, went to 8.5. This is the 1800s, early 1840s. It went from 8.5 to 4. 4.5 million people either died or were basically had to exit the country. And again, they kicked them off their land. Does that sound familiar? And they grabbed the land and they slaughtered people. I mean, it was a genocide. There was enough food on the island to feed everybody, right? Now, does that mean I got to hate every English person? No, but I will tell you that an English accent in my DNA, when I see, hello, so good to see you, and I hear that kind of, right? That's only natural, but I got to deal with that. But it's not, if you dwell in that, it's the same thing we'll be doing. We are, you got sanctimonious people dwelling on what happened to the indigenous people. They're actually denigrating and holding them back, as opposed to saying, okay, let's move forward from there. Because at the end of the day, the past is the past. Was it terrible? Perhaps here in Canada, and also the States, where they, in actual fact, took infected blankets and gave it to them. 90%. Like, it's a wonderful book, by the way, 1491. I don't know. Have you ever read that by Mann? It was basically 1491. Well, what was 1492? Is when Columbus arrived. So 1491 was what the Americas looked like prior to Columbus. In the Americas, not just the US, not just Canada. And 90% of the indigenous people in Canada, and probably the US also, died from disease brought over by the colonists, which was also purposeful. And where did they get that idea? Purposeful genocide? The Irish. It worked in the Irish, get the Irish off their land. And of course, they did the same thing in India and so on. Anyway, I digress. That's an anger coming out. But
I think we are digressing because, once we open the can of worms, we will go for whole day.
Yeah, no, the can of worms is open. What do we do about
it? There's a suggestion in the chat box by Dr. Ramesh. The solution is get back to the core, that is the central channel. It includes the 7 heart centers, 7 plexus, endocrine glands, and this will take us all where all their dimensional states. Can you expand on it, Dr. Ramesh? Can you restate your question?
Yeah. Okay. So just now he was stating about the elders and something about Hopi, I think so, or Maori, I don't know, and go from the banks of the river to the central channel. And the center is not just the heart, but it is the core, the vertical channel through which, as Jivasu explains to us, of all the chakras. And each chakra is a heart by itself. So by just doing that exercise of walking through each of these energy centers or plexuses or the chakras, what you call, you are strengthening them. You are strengthening and you're more conscious of them. And this automatically brings you into the present state or the integrated state. And this integrated state is what we need to teach the people. It was just exactly a beautiful example of the river and the bank and the river of life. And this is the river of life. This is the river of life through which everything travels. Even at the time of death, the soul ejects through this river of life, passes through. And that is why just before death also, we feel there's a glow, there is a shine in everybody before they leave, because they have that energy and resource. So we need to bring everybody without dying to this river of life. And this is the solution.
So how do we,
this is very easily done.
how is it done, Dr. Ramesh?
Okay,
That's the
so
question.
you
How?
only very simple. You need to be conscious of what you're doing. It's about focusing and being attentive. That's what is scattered. Everybody is not focused. They're not scattered. So if we start focusing on one task at a time, it will automatically happen. It'll happen. And this is what I'll be demonstrating on 22nd. How to come to the now. I will be demonstrating practically.
But I'm from Missouri. But anyhow, no problem. I just so what I'm getting at is
it is very simple.
Let me just finish. First of all, I apologize. You got my Irish up. You heard about the Irish guy that saw the two guys fighting? He goes up to them and says, "Excuse me, is this a private fight or can anybody get in?"
I'm with Dr. Ramesh on his suggestion. It is the central channel that does the trick. And connecting with 7 hearts, not with 1 heart.
Yeah,
the problem with head and heart are that they can both lead us astray. To go to the 7 hearts and strengthen them all together, the way is through the lungs. Use the lungs right, open up the central channel that strengthens all the 7 hearts. That is what we need to do if we want to use a technique. And if we,
I'm with you 100%.
And if we want to use the head to focus, then focus on anything that you are doing. Focus totally, pay full attention to everything.
That's individual. How do we bring a society to start to, in actual fact?
How to the society can be brought there through a technique. And the technique is using the lungs in the proper way. Everybody knows that breathing is essential for life, but very few people understand that good way of breathing is necessary for not only surviving, it is necessary for your physical health, it is necessary for your mental health, it is necessary for your learning ability, and it deals with stress, manages your stress. Stress makes you suffer in more than one way, and this will reduce the stress that you feel. It makes you resilient. So the central channel, the Kundalini, rising of the Kundalini is the raising of the consciousness of humanity. The breathing connects you with your thinking brain, not with your limbic brain, not with your brain.
Irish brain.
It takes the egotism away. Everybody talks about egotism or ego mind, ego identity, whatever words you use to deal with the ego. It is a natural way of dealing with ego, dealing with me and mine, to hell with you and thine. And
Milt,
one
we
more
haven't heard
comment I
from
have.
you.
One more thing I wanted to say was,
Yep.
survivability was the word survivability was used. It's our concept. It's a human concept and our belief, I think so. Just correct me if I'm wrong. It's our belief. It's not the Earth's belief. We are not
Okay.
thinking for the Earth. Earth is thinking for itself and it balances itself. It's in
Oh, no, for
perfect
sure.
state.
Earth
Yeah.
will look after
So
itself.
there's a homeostasis mechanism. It is we who are thinking and we are the ones who keep saying all these things, whereas the Earth doesn't think that way.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're
And
right.
then we talked about a vibrational field which is to be created by the elders and by the indigenous people. That field already exists. They will teach us how to tap into it. The field was always there. It is that we need to make people aware that this is the solution. What the indigenous people told us, the elders told us, go and tap into this field. And it's about communicating and talking to it. So the moment you tap into it with the focus and attention consciously, it will happen. So there were so many beautiful discussions which you people had. It was quite amazing for me. So I feel that we are talking for the vibrational field, we are talking for the Earth, whereas we are not supposed to be talking for them. They already exist and they are taking care of us, is my belief. If I'm wrong, please, I'm open to correction.
No, you're great. But we're way up at 10,000 feet. How do we get practical? Milt, you living, your discussion on the indigenous and specifically what you've seen, have you seen changes, significant changes? Are we moving the right direction?
Well, Fred,
Just
I've
sorry, I was just saying, I was just going to ask Milt.
Yeah.
Milt?
Sorry, I just had to unmute. Yeah, I think we are seeing those changes. I think that there is an exception of this field, this morphic field. This when Alarian speaks about it in a video called Being Present, he talks about a field of total awareness that exists, that we see with the birds and the other animals, and then connecting with those animals when they're on the hunt. And the belief that that animal is giving it back to us. It's all available to all of us. And I think we tend to kind of argue about it. I know I was living in an apartment complex with a quantum physicist. He had headed up the quantum department at 2 universities and so forth. And I asked him the question, I said, don't you think it's possible that there are certain peoples that intuit the quantum reality, the field? And he said, absolutely not. That unless you understand the atom and all the things about the atom, then it can't, you can't know it. And I thought, boy, that is so Western. That I just think there are peoples all over the world who couldn't survive without connecting with that field. And you say that in the video, Alarian. You can't be a good hunter. You can't bring the game home unless you connect with the animal at that different level. And what it brings that is really interesting, I think, I asked Alarian one time what he believes. And he said, I don't believe, I know. But it wasn't haughty. It was a real, honest to God knowing about being connected with life at this level. And I think that what we're talking about here is an opportunity through the meditation and contemplation and so forth to connect with that field, just as Alarian did. And I think that's the work that needs to be done here in this week, is how do we blend these? How do we see that these are the same? We're talking about the same field because it's true. It's a truth. And it's a truth that's been obscured. And that's what I was trying to say in my talk.
Yes.
Religions and science have obscured those truths. And I think we have to bring them back. That's our work. And I think the possibility of success is greater because we each have a kind of a truth meter, and it's so clogged up right now in the Western world. But when you touch that, for instance, I think if people who are hurting, maybe even people with dementia or or people that just have real bad owies were to go through a Chinese medicine sort of approach where they connected with the chakra and the meridians, and they felt the chi flowing through their body. It's like it's a miracle. It's like it's impossible. But no. I mean, I've heard people that were hurting so badly go to a reflexologist and be calmed down before they went through their treatment and actually narrate the flow of that chi through their body. Okay. So I don't know, which cultures are more accessible or less accessible, but it's there. We can give it to the masses, if you will. And I think one of the things that's really interesting, Ilarion, when you were talking about working with the Colombians and the that they don't want any of this ceremonial made available through social media and so forth.
Yes.
That they have to protect the sacred. That is the balancing act that we are really in right now. They're one of them. And I think that's really important to recognize that this work is all sacred. Very sacred, just as the earth is sacred. And I think part of the shift then has to be made is to help people understand the sacredness of it all. And maybe the question of all questions that needs to be asked is what brings life? And you get back to education and stuff here. We do not ask that question. And I feel very privileged, not being indigenous, to just be fortunate enough to have worked in a situation where I had to understand what brings life. People wanted to commit that we could give enough or create enough nourishing food every day to feed a family in a garden pod. And I'm going like, I can't make that commitment until I know how life flourishes. And I think that we have to really understand not just that it cleanses and heals and restructures and so forth, so it will flourish, but that it's self-organizing, that it's emergent, and that we have all of these incredible gifts. We have perfect order out here. We got the Garden of Eden everywhere we look.
Yeah. Thank you, Milt. John?
Create our own species and so forth. And I think as long as, I think that this is like a real key in our education process, is for all students and people of all ages to understand why life flourishes and to gain an appreciation for it.
And gain a reverence for it.
And
reverence for it. Reverence has gone out. John Weston, I want Ray, I want you to give us a youthful perspective in a sec, but John.
I certainly appreciate all the references to the indigenous. I have had the pleasure and blessing of working at Grand Canyon National Park, where I lived year-round for 4 years and then worked there 9 years total after my 36-year other career, and got to know and still know a lot of beautiful people from the Hopi, Havasupai, Wallapai, Paiute, Navajo nations, and still are good, dear friends. And one thing, I roommated actually 1 year with a Hopi gentleman, and we were tour guides together going down to show caverns and caves with native paintings and pictographs and petroglyphs. One thing that he taught me that I got taught by many was that remembrance of our connection, our remembrance of the life taken in a hunt and taking a breath out of that animal's mouth, actually, and inhaling and with that say a prayer of gratitude. And different things that we learn. And then I've been involved in many global meditation groups. And one thing that boiled down to that is as you're sharing the indigenous meditations and groups collectively joining, is that movement is going on around this planet with a lot of groups that I am surprised with. But one thing that just to share and wrap this up is through Dr. Shiv Talwar and meeting him in 2019 and taking the deep breathing workshops with Shiv. And then this year, I've had 5 months of teaching those workshops. I've had not only my 18-year-old grandson came in town and joined, and after leaving that 2-hour workshop said, wow, I now understand that I can calm myself for a 20-minute breathing period. And all of a sudden it was like an epiphany to Justice. I've had 3 generations come to a class. So we've had those. I can see from the grassroots of changing ourselves and changing the collective. And I just appreciate this, everyone here that has shared their wisdom.
Thanks, John. I'm sorry. I'm carrying my computer with me because the dog was out. I leave the dog out, but anyhow, that's it. I'm just.
I can hear from Rayleigh, Fred.
Well, this rascal of a dog of mine. He's a great dog. He's a great old pups.
Rayleigh posted something on the chat, so I'd like to hear from her.
You can see, yes.
Right.
Well, thank you for having me here. I wish there were more of me in my age group and more women on this panel, but you know, we're gonna get there. We're gonna get there.
Yes, we are. Yes, we are. Ray.
As I'm sitting here and downloading and experiencing and contributing to this space, I know that is coming, and I know I like see this seed that we are creating in our knowledge and our wisdom together that is going to. It is going to grow, and no matter how small we are right now, it is going to continue and manifest in the earth in profound ways. And I know that, and I see that. So I feel very privileged and honored to be here in the presence of all of you, and to even be able to consciously receive it. So I've been kind of swimming in my own consciousness of, you know, why am I here and what can I do about this with what I am receiving. And so I don't have much to say. My ego wants to like prove myself, and I'm like a 50-decade long researcher in something, but I'm not. I'm a poet. I'm a poet, and I've connected deeply with my own healing and spiritual journey, and seeing where that takes me. In my journey, I just share stories. I'm a storyteller, and my journey right now has just been about deep connection to self, to nature, and to other people, and how that, you know, is the essence and story of all humanity and all life, and then how that connection manifests not only through the body, but beyond that. I've also been questioning, you know, what is love, and making love, that partnership, a sacred journey, not only back to nature, back to ourselves, back to each other. And for me, the big kind of theme in that right now, I've been collectively perceiving is surrendering trust. And in that surrender back to our divine nature, we are able to heal and remember, you know, our innate healing, our innate divinity, but also perceive it in everyone else around us. And I feel that's what's being lost at this time, but is being remembered slowly. And I'm thankful for the collective, you know, upheaval that COVID recently gave us, for example, to remember that divinity, and remember our healing journey. We're all on it. And I wonder if there's more to come of that, where collectively we remember we're all suffering. We have this ability to suffer together. And I wonder if that is purposeful. And I wonder what more would come, and how can we be prepared for it? How can we heal it now? And I know that, yes, it's an individual thing. And I know that when I heal my body and heal my heart and heal my mind, I'm healing everyone else around me because I'm connected. But how do we I know that my purpose right now is to help remind others that they are also on this path, that they are not separate. None of us are separate. So yes, that's what I'm receiving right now, and I'm floating through that. And so much wisdom here, so much wisdom. And
So
I
much-
hope that we're able to share it. And I want to know how to do that effectively and strategically and devote myself to that.
Well, thank you for being with us. Shivasu?
Thank you.
Yeah, listening to everyone, I think two things are collectively we cannot be transformed, but collectively we can control.
Explain.
Various laws, rules, forums, United Nations, countries, government, politics, we can control. And that is where we are moving, because there is nothing like collective transformation, because the very nature of transformation is individual. So collective restraint, just like in a city, we control those elements which are damaging the city, destroying the city. We cannot transform all the population of the city, but we put measures so there is no further damage. That is possible. So collective control, but individual transformation. And to that individual transformation, there are two parts. Number one, of children. From the conception, this child has to get an education. Our schools, our university cannot transform anyone because they are funded by those people who have a vested interest. The real educators are not professors or teachers. Real educators are parents, because by the time a child is 8 years old, it is already conditioned.
Yes.
School comes much later. So unless this education, which is hinted by Milt and others, that it has to come from parents, grandparents, and caretakers. Because to transform an adult is a very difficult thing, because they are already conditioned to a particular set of condition from their society and culture. It is possible, but it is more difficult. So there has to be a very clear child's education, not through school or university or college, from the parents themselves. They are the best educators. It has to come from there. Because if this child's foundation is put rightly in first 8 years, there is a more possibility of that change. Number two is no single system in the past, whether it's Christianity or Hinduism or Judaism or Aboriginal tradition, none of them are sufficient at global level. Elements of each one of them. So indigenous tradition is beautiful, but nobody is going to go back. 8 billion people, it is an impossibility, but there is a beautiful element which has to be integrated. Because the movement of the time is forward.
Yes.
So we can pick and choose those elements which are relevant, so it will respond to most of the people. So collective control, individual transformation, children and adult, picking up from each tradition that element which makes sense to the modern mind, because we cannot go back.
Shiv, I'm going to go to Shiv and then Jagdish. And Elron, I'd like you to finish, if you wouldn't mind. After, we'll come back to you, but just your overall thoughts on listening to this and advice. I'll come back to you and close this session. But Shiv, go ahead.
I agree. Transformation has to be personal. And it is the practice that transforms. And Dr. Jivasu took us through a practice this morning. And that practice for 10 minutes a day or 20 minutes a day or whatever, it may start with 2 minutes a day when people are in grade 2, and then 3 minutes a day, and then work up to 10 minutes a day. And that can transform. And there is a lot of research being done by neurologists. Dr. Huberman of Stanford, I invited him to come to this conference and he could not. And I am going to show some of the videos that he, of his research. And there is another Dr. James Doty of Stanford. Again, videos of his research I will be showing in the next panel on Wednesday. How that transformation is a skill that is teachable to young and old alike, and to convince the politicians to change public policy to include that in the school system. We hit them in their pocketbook, because transformation is not only of behavior, transformation is also of health. The practices that transforms your behavior also transforms your health, mental as well as physical. The amount of money that they're spending on mental health these days, astounding amount of money. Trillions of dollars are spent on mental health. And countries are going broke, paying for diabetes, paying for heart and stroke and things like that, which can be avoided with the transformative practices like what we did this morning with Dr. Jivasu. And that is what is going to convince the politicians to fund the type of education that we are looking for. Criminality is another thing. When you change behavior, jails are full of prisoners in the United States, and all that can change. And also, don't forget racial discrimination, terrorism, people picking up guns and going killing people in the schools every other day. All that can change. And I say that if Hitler did a few minutes of deep breathing a day, World War II could have been averted. You cannot be calm and angry at the same time. It is impossible. And that deep breathing calms your mind. And a calm mind cannot be an angry mind.
Jack, just
Techniques.
Yep.
What we did this morning was a technique. Dr. Ramesh is going to do something with us on Thursday. These are actionable solutions.
Excellent.
I think
Jack,
it's time to.
Yep. Go ahead, Jagdish. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's wonderful that we had this session, panel conversations, and hearing so many different perspectives about life. Life is a very simple process. Yes, transformation is individual. If 10 or 12 of us on this conference, if we all become transformed, then that is a tremendous change on the planet. Transform one person can transform the whole life on the planet. So this is again a journey we have taken together. The question we have to ask every day: who am I? Why am I here? So all these questions which you are asking are subsets of the main question: why are we here and what are we doing? So there's no control, collective control we can do. It's just a belief we can control. We have nothing we can control. We can all facilitate, we can work together, we can work as a team effort. All those things are the ones which are possible. And I think Shiva has done tremendous work about calming the mind. but it's a two-way process. The first stage is the calming the mind. Second stage is clearing the mind, clearing of all the garbage we have accumulated over centuries or all our lifetimes we have lived before. So the clearing the mind is again a process of meditation, connecting with our, say, example, anger of thought, anger of greed, anger of hate. Unless we bring it on the screen of the mind and burn it off, and burning it off becomes easy when we bring the power of observation, when we concentrate, when we focus. So all those things are possible, but it's a practice. If we are stuck only calming the mind, then not clear it, there's no transformation. And that is possible. So I have other presentations. I'll be sharing how to take this knowledge into the education system. What do we need to do at this time? What are the actionable items? So I'll be sharing that. Also, I'll be expanding on this, the flame of attention. The flame of attention can burn all our past memories, all our impressions, all our conditioning. That is all possible. The more things we read, the more knowledge we gain, more confused we become. The life is a very simple process. Less we know, more effective we are, because it's an action connecting with the spirit, or offering ourselves to the spirit, offering all our negativity to the spirit, and cleaning up that mess which is existing in us. Those the garbage we are carrying with us, every one of us, and that unless we clear that garbage, I think there's no transformation. Thank you.
Thank you, Jagdish. Aaron, I'm going to let you close it for us, your thoughts, and we'll close this session. You're on mute. There you go. Good.
Thanks, Fred. Well, first of all, I wanted to respond to what Dr. Ramesh had said. It is true that Native peoples all over the world have been covering regionally the energies that are there for as an alternative to the existing energy that is there. And now the situation is, and this is the reason why the Colombian elders have created this vision. And there are many groups that, by the way, that have the similar vision, that we need to connect and unite all the groups in the world, because this energy that is now surrounding the world is a consciousness that we are all engaged in. And, you know, we see that in our discussions with every group. And that we need to have this focused energy worldwide. And this is, they're saying, the elders say, this is the only way we're going to be able to do it. So that's one point. The other point is that I really have listened to every one of you, and each of you have a wisdom. And from our standpoint, there is no more singular gurus. We are all gurus now. We have to ask our own hearts what we need to do. And that is going to be your gift to the world right now. We are here for a purpose. And it's no accident that we are here. And that we must access our metaphysical heart, if you will, to know what gift we have for the world, and follow your heart, what it tells you, not your mind, because the mind will play all kinds of tricks. You must listen to your heart, and getting to the heart is the longest journey, as people say, that we have to make in our lives. But that's what we have to do. So thank you very much for having me here.
But I don't want to put you on the spot, but I am going to put you on the spot. Do you have a closing prayer for us?
I do.
Could we impose on you to do that?
Yes, thank you. And just take a deep breath, ground yourself, Ago, Timaligaligasa, Tini Tinisada, Wishawana Tinisada, Kanoga Tinisada. Grandfather, Great Spirit, Spirit that lives in all things, one of many names. We thank you for this day. We thank you for this collection of people who are bringing their wisdom. We thank you for our loved ones in our lives. We thank you for everything in existence. And we thank you for all your teachings that we can access if only we have the ears to listen. Like the teachings of the eagle that teaches us that we too can soar high and see far. Like the salmon that teaches us that we too can come home to you. Like the owl that teaches us that we too can see in the dark. Like the trees that teaches us that we must be grounded and rooted in order to grow tall and be strong. These are many teachings that are there for us if we only listen. And thank you for this day. Thank you for everything in existence. Aho, Kalalakomanis.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And we will see you tomorrow at 9 bells, okay? At 9 o'clock. By the way, we will be opening with a big Mi'kmaq prayer. Mi'kmaq is basically in Nova Scotia, the indigenous people here. So we'll be opening with a prayer tomorrow. Anyway, God bless you all. Thank you, folks. See you at 9 tomorrow. Shiv, I'll give you a shot, okay?